Methylene blue and the language of energy. Now, there's something that happens to many people after retirement, and it's something that few folks talk about plainly. Now, a person can still be alive, still breathing, still walking around, but the energy just isn't what it used to be. Now, that's not the ambition of energy, is what I'm talking about, of youth. I'm talking about the quiet daily energy that lets you wake up clear headed, move around the house easily, think straight, and enjoy the day without feeling like the battery is always running low and empty. Now, many retirees assume this decline it's simply just a part of aging. You just accept it. They hear it enough times that eventually they accept it as a rule of nature. But if you look carefully through older medical writing, look back bright-eyed at this, especially from the 19th century, you find something very interesting. Earlier physicians didn't always view fatigue, fogginess, or slow thinking as an unavoidable part of growing older. They looked to research about curing things. They often treated it is a problem of energy management inside the body. Not when those older doctors used the word energy. They weren't just talking about motivation or enthusiasm. They were talking about the simple fact that every cell in the body must produce usable power in order to function. Now, the heart beats because it just beats because you get potassium. The mitochondria has energy. ATP is built. The brain thinks on it, muscles move on it, even digestion depends on it. And when that energy production slows down, the whole system slows down with it. You can feel in ways that, man, I'm just exhausted. Thinking becomes slower. Recovery from exertion takes so long. Sleep doesn't feel like it's very restorative. The body's still functioning, but it feels like it's operating on a lower voltage. Now, in the 19th century, doctors and researchers, they were experimenting with certain compounds that interacted with cellular energy systems. Now, for example, we've heard a lot about this compound, but it was developed in the 19th century, believe it or not. One of these compounds was something called methylene blue. Methylene blue is an old substance. It was first used in the late 1800s. In those early years, physicians explored it for several different purposes, including infections and metabolic conditions. But what caught the attention of many researchers was its unusual interaction with the tiny structures inside our cells, and that was called the mitochondria. Now, you don't have to remember all these big words. Just think of the mitochondria as small little engines inside every cell, like a generator. They generate the usable energy. Now, what researchers noticed was that methylene blue seemed to help electrons move more efficiently through parts of the cell's energy system. Now, in plain language, it appeared to assist the flow of energy in the overall production in the cell. Now, I want to be very careful here, okay? So remember, this is not magic. It's not just a cure-all. And it certainly isn't something a person should just flat experiment with casually without learning more about it and what you're doing. But historically speaking, methylene blue represents an interesting example of how earlier medicine sometimes looked directly at cellular energy rather than just treating symptoms. And that's what's so fascinating about 19th century. They didn't just, like today, they just treat symptoms. If it hurts, we'll give you a pill, give you this. But they wanted to treat the source. And that idea connects with something much, much broader. If you pay attention to the body as a system, you start to notice that energy production depends on many things working together in unison. Minerals play that role also. Magnesium, potassium, and copper all participate in processes that allow the body to generate and manage energy. Without those minerals, the system cannot run smoothly. Water matters too, as I've said. Real hydration is not simply pouring the large amounts of plain water into the body. When water lacks the electrolytes, it just doesn't offer the needs, the foundational needs that the body requires. Now, as we say, sunlight plays a big role here too with the D3. Our bodies evolved under sunlight, and many, many biological processes still depend on it. Sleep, it's probably the most overlooked one, and you'll hear me talk about it 100 more times about sleep, but it's so overlooked. During sleep, the body repairs tissues, restores chemical balance, and resets parts of the nervous system. When sleep is poor, energy production is just, next day you suffer from it. And fasting, which many older traditions practice without calling it by that name, gives the digestive system a break and allows the body to rebalance the internal processes. So when we talk about something like methylene blue, it really belongs in a much, much larger conversation about how the body produces and manages energy over the long run. What earlier physicians often understood is that you cannot fix a tired body with a single substance. Now, the system itself has to be cared for, right? Retirement is actually, it's that opportunity again that you have. And for decades and decades, many people lived under the constant schedule, alarms, deadlines, and all these responsibilities. The body was just pushed on the back burner while basic maintenance was overlooked and put in second place. Now you got retirement, gives you that time and gives you that time to increasingly observe and correct that system. Now, this is where retirees can become more attentive, and like I've said many times before, you become the project manager of your own health. Take responsibility for your own health instead of assuming decline and inevitable. A person can begin asking simple questions. Am I sleeping deeply enough? Am I getting sunlight during the day? Am I hydrating properly with minerals, not just plain water? Now, I've talked about this every time, but I want to get this established in your mind. We are trying to sculpt out a character where we can reach optimal health. We need to have our mind and our spirit evolve to that sense and the urgency. So we have to stay on these things. And when you get into this cadence, this rhythm, you'll understand and you will keep telling this. And this is why I'm trying to talk about this. I'm having to reassert it to myself. Many understood that before there was modern medicine became so complicated, and that it's the quiet lesson behind substance like methylene blue. It reminds us that the body is not just a machine with parts that just simply wear out like a pickup. It is a living energy system that can sometimes recover balance when we begin paying attention again. Now, I want to say something important here to anyone watching who may feel like their best years are behind them. It is not. Retirement is not the closing chapter of usefulness. It is the second act of observation. It is the stage of life where wisdom has the chance to grow, and you got lucky enough to get here and to survive to this point. A person who begins caring for their own body thoughtfully becomes an example to the younger generations. They show children and grandchildren that health is not something you hand over to institutions and say, give me a shot, fix me. It is something you steward yourself. You take responsibility for your body over time. You become the living record of what works. That kind of leadership matters more than people realize. And the good news is that the human body often responds when given the right conditions. So your scorecard is you. You can look around, and not to condemn people, but they have crumbled to the system. Now, there is exceptions, and some people can't help it. But you can see going to the stores and seeing people that can barely walk. This is not the way it was years ago. And I find when I talk to people, they went to the system and said, fix me. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. what you're really saying is, I'm not taking responsibility for myself. You do not have to have a medical degree to have wisdom with your own body and be responsible. And like I said before, many achievements is with modern medicine, but there's many shortcomings too within the pharmaceutical community, and with the metabolic syndrome, with the toxins in their food. You have to be responsible for you. You don't want to be on the conveyor belt being stamped like meat, take this, take this. And this is what older doctors in the 19th century, they realized that they needed to spend time to look at you case per case. Now, we go into the clinics and it's an exhaustive line of people all piled up in there. And I understand that many of the doctors do not have time to look at it like that. But that's why we need to step back, and we need to try to take care of some of this stuff and get it narrowed down so that we can have wisdom about ourselves, and we can identify what we need to cherry pick from the medical system or the healthcare system today, if anything. This gives us clarity. We don't come in emotionally and say, "Fix me, doctor." They start giving you blood transfusion you don't need to remove an appendix. Now, I say that sarcastically, but I'm trying to sculpt myself and you, the listener, into a person that is a powerful manager of your own health. And when you don't know, go and research it. Go look for it. That's what I did. I've written about 3 books. I'm finishing up the 3rd one, called Vitamin D3 and All-Cause Mortality. But initially, I lost my father in 2008, and we had taken him to the doctor, and I didn't know. I was scared, and he didn't know, but he had got he was a person that always went and got flu shots and that sort of thing, and he wasn't feeling good. And so we went to the doctor, and they kept looking, couldn't find anything, and he was hospitalized and just seemed to be going downhill. And finally, they did I believe they did an MRI, and they found a 12-centimeter tumor, and it was independent of his lung and everything else. And so they offered nothing to him. It shocked me, the whole system. He's sitting in the hospital, and they're bringing him Ensures, sugar drinks, French fries, barbecue sandwiches. And I really wanted to, this was an eye-opening event for me. I wanted to look to them to say, well, isn't there something more we can do? Well, and so they take a biopsy of the tumor. And I was starting to research due to his sickness. And I read about vitamin C and sodium ascorbate and how it's close to the pH level of your blood. And I was trying to seek getting an IV treatment for him. And I was just stumbling on to that and the importance of certain nutrients and everything. And when I asked the doctors, what about his blood work and everything? Oh, everything's fine. And I didn't realize that the test they gave him for magnesium, they look at magnesium in the blood and said, oh, his magnesium level's fine, everything's fine. But what I learned from that is magnesium in the blood stays constant. If you're getting like a muscle cramp or something like that, your body will pull magnesium from the muscle to maintain certain levels in the blood to make sure that you don't have a heart attack. Because if you drop your magnesium levels too low, it will cause you to have a heart attack. Now, that's just a small window of that. And I noticed when you go to the hospital, the first thing they do when you're hospitalized, they give you potassium chloride. Because they know that 92% of the world population that I've read is deficient in potassium and magnesium. So if you go, say at 20 years old, you're deficient, you get 40, 50, what do you think happens? Could be metabolic syndrome, high blood pressure, chronic illness, So that led me to believe, to research, and that's what led me to magnesium and copper. Alpha lipoic acid. Alpha lipoic acid is a huge, huge important supplement to take. And so I know I'm getting kind of off track on some of this, but this gets back to the methylene blue and the mitochondria. And and making energy. But the mitochondria, when it gets sick, that's usually in a state of cancer state or poor metabolic chronic illness. So, when we get back to treating the mitochondria, and this is what methylene blue does, it gives the mitochondria energy. And so it helps energy improve, clarity, it returns, and then strength rebuilds gradually. Not overnight, but steadily. The body keeps record across decades, and sometimes it only needs the right environment to start restoring and correcting those records. And so that's probably what we would call a curing. So whether the topic is methylene blue, minerals, sunlight, sleep, or fasting, the deeper message remains the same. Pay attention to the system. Care for the system and give the body the conditions it was designed to work within. That is not a quick fix, but it is reliable direction, and most of the time, that is exactly what retirees are looking for. That's what you need to hear. A steady direction rather than another promise. I don't have all this figured out, I promise you. I'm still working on it myself. So let's keep moving forward on this journey together. And I appreciate you watching. Thank you much.